And I'll let you know if my internet is going to throttle down. In which case, we'll just try it and see if it works or not. I don't know. We'll see. Um, you asked me how long I've been into these sort of topics.
Yes.
Um, it's been a while. I'm 33 now, and I would say since ever since I opened my eyes and I saw kind of how the system that we're in works and was horrified by it, then and then nobody wanted to talk to me about it, and then that started the whole thing. Uh,
Mhm.
so I've been in it a while, but I would say as far as the collective being sort of open to discussing anything,
Mhm.
it's been opened up recently in the last few years. I feel,
Very
um,
cool.
but it's still there's still a pretty big distinction between like your average Joe person that would think you're insane talking about any one of the myriad of topics that come through these sorts of channels. There's still a very big gap, which I think all of us probably struggle with to an extent, especially because family members are involved. But yeah, I mean, I've been aware of these. I've been aware of it for a while.
Yeah, I totally understand. I understand. Now I've kind of helped my family along a little bit, and we've all kind of come to terms with what's happening. And but it's it's been an interesting 2 years, especially for me. But I understand it's been a long time coming, long time coming.
It has.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you come to be in a sort of position where you're because that's what you're doing. That's what I see you doing. Is you are sort of you're giving a perspective that a lot of people don't have access to normally. And I know I do the same thing, but how did you come to that spot? How did you come to like giving out to the community?
hmm for me, it came kind of organically, and it was kind of like something that I never imagined in a million years that I'd be doing what I'm doing right now, talking about these things and kind of being extremely open about my life the way I am. But when I first had my first abduction experience in 2013, it kind of opened a new paradigm for me that I couldn't ignore, I couldn't close, I couldn't just pretend that it didn't happen. So it took a long time. It took 5 years for me to actually act on that experience. And in 2017 I got my regression. And I mean, I've had an event planning company for 10 years prior to that. Right. So, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
my life was, I built my business out of my garage, and that was my life. That was my baby. And, even though it was so many ups and downs, I was just finally getting to the point where the company was getting somewhere good. And then this happens. And it just made me question absolutely everything. So for the next 5 years, it was just kind of torture at that point because nothing made sense anymore. My daily grind didn't make sense. All of my focus and my goals didn't make sense anymore because I would question reality. I would question myself. I would question the purpose of absolutely everything, including being even in that industry and just observing people, how they act, how the system is set up, how our structure of reality. And so I couldn't stop asking the questions why and how, why and how. And I guess in 2017, like, I made a final decision to for example, part ways with my partner at the time. And when I got the regression with Alba Weinman, who was the person that regressed me and actually made me, I was able to really go deep into each one of those experiences since childhood. And it turns out that I was a lifelong abductee,
Mm.
not just that one experience. I mean, you know, y- you just can't go back to going back to life. And literally the next day after coming back from Ohio, that was my first regression. The second regression, I think I was in Arizona, and I quit my job. Like, I put in my 2 weeks notice and I said, I'm sorry, I just can't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been working extremely hard on my own personal development. Like I had been meditating like 3 4 hours a day, trying to understand myself in all of this information. And for me, the my biggest goal was to try to find out like my truth, the ultimate truth of all the truths, everything I was hearing, everything I was experiencing, and beyond that. So in the process of doing that, I mean, a lot of things fell apart. You know, my the way I thought about myself, the way I thought about my family, my duties as a person, as a human, as a woman, everything kind of fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of a pretty harsh transition going through this kind of existential crisis. And I went through that maybe a couple times
Yeah.
after every regression that I did, because the amount of information that I became privy to was just like overwhelming. You know, it was beyond overwhelming. And I guess there was the sense of confusion at some point where you're not sure if you should be angry or, you know, even feel violated or upset. And so that opened the door for even more questions.
Yeah, or like who can I talk to about this? Like who can I talk to about these odd experiences?
Exactly. And who can match the same experience that I'm having? And you know, at the time, you know, I had been so like I guess it's completely naive to the fact that a lot of people are actually experiencing this, but no one's talking about it that openly. I mean, unless you go into the UFO phenomena circle and the research circle, or you go to the conferences and the groups, you're not going to be hearing about this on the streets, you know. And so it was extremely isolating. And, you know, trying to find someone to talk to about it, and especially about the hybridization program. You know, there's some people like, you know, Bridget Nielsen and a couple other people online that talk about the hybridization program, but I couldn't find someone to sit down with me and talk to me and be like, Geraldine, this is okay. You know, this is a normal thing. This is a unnormal thing. So you feel very extremely vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not sure when the next time it's going to happen. You're not sure what's the next step. So it was, you know, a lot of going through that. And I think ultimately, Gary, it came to the point where I was just on this journey to have all my questions answered. And I did it through my own meditation and also regression. That's where I was able to answer my questions. And I think what happened is I kind of opened up like this I don't know if it's, you know, to the Akashic records. Of course, you tap into the Akashic records and even beyond to be able to see the universe, the structure of the universe. You know, what is a soul? What is the organism of a human, and what we're doing here? So, right now, I'm writing my first book and trying to organize all this information to try to, you know, help people look at this from a new perspective, I guess.
Can you tell a little bit about your abduction experiences? And just to let you know, before, as far as me, I don't have like abduction experiences, but my sort of, I mean, remembered. Perhaps it's happened and I haven't remembered it, but
Sure.
my experience has been much more sort of almost like I don't know. I've had very crazy experiences and I've had like out of body experiences and I've had alternate reality without drugs experiences, but I've never been abducted. So
Okay.
if you tell me, then it's going to be like telling someone who has no clue about it.
Okay, yeah, that's amazing. And the majority of us, you know, we don't know what it's like to be abducted. And that's the same thing that happened to me, because if it wasn't for that memorable experience that I had, that was the one memorable one, the one that I knew happened. So let me tell you, basically, it was October 2013, and I'm in bed, and I have, you know, my window facing the street, and I wake up randomly, which never ever used to happen to me before. Usually I sleep straight through the night, and I wake up randomly and I pick up my phone and it says 3:33 exactly. And I was like, "Oh, that's cool, and that's, you know, that's interesting." Um, so I put the phone down and I noticed that my room is super brightly lit. And I'm like, what is this light that's in my room? I thought maybe somebody was shining a car light into my room.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me, after waiting a little bit for that light to turn off, it wouldn't turn off. And I kind of started to get a little bit like scared and kind of like upset at the same time, like, who is shining that light at this time? So I get out of bed and I walk over to the window and I'm looking through the mini blinds. And as I do, the light gets even brighter, so bright that it hurts to look at it. But I'm trying to look at it because I'm like, who on earth is trying to do this to me right now? And when I look at the light in the direction of the light, I'm looking beyond that and I can see a shiny metal, which is the craft that's there.
Uh-huh.
And next thing I know, I'm completely paralyzed. And basically, I can't move anything but my pupils. And out of the light that I'm basically forced to stare at now because I can't quite blink,
Yeah.
there are these six little lines of shadows that come out from the light. And they were grays, they were tall grays. So obviously, I'm horrified and I'm being pulled out of my bedroom window in front of these grays. And they bring me into the craft. And, it was just, I mean, when I tell this experience, it's literally like I'm there. It's still so very vivid, so very real for me even now. Um, and it's interesting how these memories develop in your mind because it's not like something that you did last week or the week before that or even a month ago. I mean, this is like so vivid part of your memory.
Yeah.
So,
And this was how long ago? 6 years?
yeah, 2013.
Yeah.
Mhm. And so, as I'm entering the craft, what they're showing me, first of all, I see my aunt in the craft, and that was like a
Really?
panic mode. Like
Wow.
when I saw her, she was also paralyzed and being moved across. And obviously, they show me for a reason, and I'll tell you why later. But then I'm brought into this front space where it looks like a somewhat of a control room of some sort. And I
Mm-hmm.
see their technology. I see this beautiful table with their holographic, these beautiful, extremely advanced holographic technology that they have. Basically, some sort of a navigation system that looks like, the planets.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Like a
just
solar system type holograph?
yeah,
Okay.
it's fascinating, like a light bluish light on top of like a oval type of table
Mm-hmm.
or a stand on my
And it's
right
just like
side. And then
projecting
beyond
up
that,
to.
yeah.
Okay.
And then beyond that, I'm seeing the craft, but the craft is translucent. So I can literally see beyond to stars outside of the craft. So we
Wow.
are we are now in space, in the middle of some space. So this is just all overwhelming. And as I'm entering, and this is all happening in 1 second, I'm seeing there are three grays in front of me, and they present me with this holographic prism, like a blue prism, and they're like layers of the prism with like eight kind of stacked boxes of prism. And each one of those layers has some kind of movement and information in them, and they open each one of them to explain something. And they start out, first they're showing me alien language, and I remembered that and I wrote it down and I show it in my presentations now. um, and the most important out of all of this was the fact that they were introducing me to my hybrid children.
Really?
So yeah.
Wow.
So the one of the boxes has like eight little lights and it expands in front of me. And as they open, and what it is really, it's a holographic projection, but at the same time, what they're doing is opening portals in a sense, because they are opening a gateway to something to enter into this space. So I was presented with the children literally physically in front of me, and I met four of them that day. And I mean, as soon as I saw this rare looking child that had like blonde hair and like tremendous, beautiful blue eyes, it was just incredible. Okay, you can see I'm not blonde. So when I see this blonde child, it was impactful, the connection that I had with the child, and just recognizing myself in that child. So that immediate maternal energy and information and connection that comes into you. I don't have children, so I'm not familiar with that feeling. So it was overwhelming to be able to meet that child and experience that. So um The question was, it was kind of an emotional thing because I guess the thing was like, well, what do I do now? I have these children. Where do they come from? And what am I supposed to do with them? Am I just going to go back and never see them again? Or
Uh-huh.
how does this work? There were so many questions at that point. So anyway, the next moment after they walked me through this information, I'm at the edge of my bed upside down. And I never wake up like that ever, ever, ever in my life.
Like you were just turned around on the bed?
Yeah,
Okay.
literally at the end of my bed, like upside down.
Uh-huh.
And so, I guess it took me a little bit to kind of recover and kind of like, what just happened? What happened? Just was that some kind of insanely realistic dream, or what? Because you just don't know how to translate what occurred. So I told my parents this story. I told them what happened. And of course, they're extremely supportive and loving. So they were like, oh, that's really beautiful. Good job. That's wonderful. You know
Really?
what I mean? So they're so sweet. And I was like, yeah, but I was like, well, but what does that mean? And so do I really have hybrid children? And then I started to think, how did they get those hybrid children?
Right.
Where did they come from? Like, what was my role in this? How was I involved in all of this?
Uh-huh.
And that's why I went to get the regression. And to make things more interesting, that next week when I had my first client, because I taught meditation, I'm the owner of Bay Area Meditation here,
Mm-hmm.
and I would teach one-on-one meditation. I was sitting next to my client, and all of a sudden, I can see her entire electromagnetic field. I can see cords, contracts, absolutely everything. I can feel everything that she's feeling.
Wow.
So, to me, that was like my only proof of what had happened, because I never had the ability to see those things beforehand. So
Wow.
obviously something was activated, something shifted and changed in me in some way to allow me to see and heighten my psychic abilities.
That's amazing. So, are you
Yeah.
did you retain that ability, or was that like just with that client?
Oh no, no, that's what I do now full time.
So you see everybody's aura or energetics?
That's correct. So basically, I can see your entire electromagnetic field. I can see your chakra system. I can see information that you're storing in the body, ancestral lineages and cords that connect you to your network, and how and why you are connected to your network. And so that's what I do now. I do something called DNA reprogramming, which is focused on opening up deep-seated traumas or impactful imprinting of experiences that create programs in your subconscious mind. And so when these programs are created, then we're like creating constant filtration systems. And so our experience is then limited because everything is coming through these experiential filtrations,
Mm-hmm.
basically filtration system. So that's what I do. I help people open that up because I can see, and I literally can see pain and suffering manifested in the body. And so usually it'll be where people are storing pain or illness or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. Did you find out? Did you find out what was the correlation or what was your part in creating these hybrid children, or did they tell you about what that was?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So all of my regressions are actually public. They're all posted online. And I think one of the most impactful of those regressions were Alba Weinman 178. It's called 178 is the number. And the first half of it, I'm tapping into information about the structure of the universe. But the second part of it, I go into my abductions, about 10 different experiences starting at 5 years old. And so I guess that's when I started my participation in the program at 5, where I am implanted with technology in order to prepare the body and monitor the body so that when I come into, my menstruation is beginning, then I'm prepared to start, with the process of the hybridization process, basically. And so it's really some of it is a little bit graphic, because basically it's a series of implantation process, insemination, gestation, and retrieval. That's what it is. And I've gone through that several times. And so at the end of all of these regressions, what I find is I have actually 24 hybrid children. And I've been a part of 4 different hybridization programs.
Wow.
So yeah, so what's the interesting thing about this is that every time that I've had some kind of implantation, whether it was technology or whether it was a biology that they're putting in, like a fetus that they're trying to go in through a gestation process, my body would have a very serious physical reaction to it. So one of the most memorable experiences, for example, is when I was diagnosed with some kind of an amoeba that the doctor could not identify. He could not, he thought that it was something that I caught in Thailand a year before, and it took like a year to gestate. Like he couldn't explain why or where I would get an amoeba like this. And so I went through 2 weeks of just being horribly, horribly sick. And I'm very allergic to chemicals and drugs. Like I cannot take any kind of medication of any kind because I'll have an allergic reaction to it. So the doctor would like give me like all these pills. He tried everything and I couldn't keep any of them in the system. My system, I would end up at the hospital with all kinds of things, convulsions, seizures, um, rashes, heart problems. So after 2 weeks, everything was gone. There was nothing.
Yeah.
The Yeah, the doctor couldn't find an amoeba. He couldn't find any kind of trace of anything. It was just, I was perfect. So back then, I mean, I couldn't have even imagined to linking these things to extraterrestrial contact, right? It just wasn't even in our paradigm.
Yeah.
But I think what happened was I was just so happy that I was okay and I wasn't going to die because he said if you don't take an antibiotic, you will die in 2 or 3 months because the amoeba will take over your body. So it was very stressing, very scary, and then all of a sudden for it to be completely gone, you wonder what happened. And so in regression, this was one of the times where they had implanted something in the body, and I had completely forgot about that. And so this is just one example of many times that I have ended up at the hospital or something happened to me medically that were linked exactly to the moments where I had implantation or I was going through some kind of gestation process. And I just want to add really important that also my menstruation cycle was really getting messed up. And I live a very healthy lifestyle. I eat really healthy, I exercise. So usually my cycle is exactly on point. So anytime that it would be off, it would be extremely clear, you know? And even times where I would not be partnered, usually I would have long-term relationships, and in between, I would get pregnant.
In between.
And then it would be like the doctor would say, "Oh, it's just a shift in hormones because you're stressed out, or maybe you're out of balance, or what are you drinking? Like, is it your medicines?" And no, so these things happened. I guess the funny thing is that we don't question these things, Gary. And so, so many things happened in my life that I never questioned. And it wasn't until I got the regressions that I understood everything made sense for the first time.
So, with having so you're having babies here on Earth, and they're getting taken out like via abductions, or how does that work? Do you know you're pregnant, or do you feel like?
Yes. So, for example, the woman will have all the symptoms of pregnancy. Okay. So, for example, you'll miss your cycle, you'll miss your period. And so you'll have all the symptoms of being pregnant, but they will remove the child, the zygote, basically, about a week to 2 weeks after, implantation. And the longest that it's gone was 3 months. three
Wow.
months. Okay. And so what normally will happen is that you will feel like you had a miscarriage, but either there's nothing there or there is something there, but it's like an anomalous type of miscarriage. And I've had very strange things happen, So there's also different programs depending on the kind of hybridization program that there is. The procedures are different, the results are different. I was a part of a draconian agenda, a reptilian, and a humanoid hybrid, and as well as a MyLab, military lab, MyLab experience. So each one of those are extremely different in the sense that how they affect your body, how they prepare your body for the program is completely different. And the reason for that is because, for example, the draconian, it's a very extremely low frequency race that we're talking about. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in order for the human body to be able to sustain an insemination of DNA that is so mixed, so we're talking about a cocktail of DNA genetically altered, um, you know, um, seed that they're basically putting in you. Your body has to be enclosed in this kind of a technology that is creating an environment to sustain whatever is going to go through a gestation process. So our human body would not be able to survive a full term pregnancy with these kinds of species that are being, manufactured basically. So
Mm-hmm.
they have to be the insemination and the gestation process begins, and then they remove it out of the body. Okay. And the way that they remove it is either, obviously through abduction of myself, and they use technology to either pull it out, or um, it's just like what we may know as an abortion procedure, but they take out the fetus and then they put it into a gestation tank.
Mm-hmm.
And so many times, I would see the walls. I've been in a hybridization ship a couple times. And what it looks like is basically you're on a kind of a metal bed, and when you look to your side, you see like these walls of these spherical glass tanks, and within them is what they're gestating. Okay,
Wow.
so it's very impressive, and it's very interesting, and I'm not the only one.
Have you met others?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And this is why I started my website, hybridmother.com. I started a support group to support women and men that are going through this hybridization program, because it's a very, when you don't know what's happening, the medical, obviously the medical industry is not going to provide you any kind of answer near these things.
Right.
What do you do? I mean, I have women writing me from all around the world now, every day, telling me about their experiences, what they're going to, sometimes emotional. I mean, the effects on the human body are very real. And that's where things go from being a fantasy or a story or someone else's experience to very real.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
about like how much is your own consent involved in this, or is this something that they will tell you you agreed to such and so other time and then your mind got wiped, or how does that factor into it?
Yeah, that's a very complex topic. And what we're talking about here, in a sense, is the concept of contractual agreements.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I guess how we can define the contractual agreements is contractual agreements made within the construct of our reality. Given that the construct of our reality is manufactured by the same people that are producing the hybridization program, we are, in a sense, cycling through this kind of a reincarnation cycle, that we keep coming back to our lives here, that we believe are, these experiences. We have at least 100 years to experience this life as consciousness. But as we're here, these contractual agreements are kind of tied energetically, and it's a very complex thing. I can go into it a little bit more, but just so you understand, like, what we're living in is not what we believe. I mean, our reality is kind of like a holographic projection that we are all collectively co-creating.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say that creation is kind of a product of a program that is inserted in this particular timeline, in this dimension, in this shared experience. Okay, so we're kind of all seeing the same thing, obviously,
Yeah.
and it's a controlled kind of a system and structure of reality that we're in.
Like a
And
collective dream state, right?
sure, absolutely. And I mean, and that's why we have like access to the Akashic records, and we have access to, lucid dreaming and being able to do that. But those things are inherent of a human. And the reason why I say that is because what makes humans so valuable and so important in this kind of a hybridization program is because, in a way, the humans are really the reproductive system for this overall matrix universe, for
Mm-hmm.
this organism.
Yeah.
And, in other words, we are really the most advanced biotechnology in this matrix universe because of the fact that we maintain and our physical bodies are fragmenting um, intelligence and infinite consciousness in a sense that unlike these species which operate on a different frequency, on a different vibration, they cannot sustain the exact same information that we can. So that's what makes it very interesting. And I mean, we can go back to the origin because this is what I research, what I talk about, and what I study. I talk about the DNA origins. And I'm talking about this goes back into histories, into the seeding of life on this planet originating in Mesopotamia and maybe even beyond that. And what I'm suggesting is that really as a human race, we are really a hybridization program. The human race is basically a hybridization program. So that means that this has been happening for centuries and centuries and centuries. So my research has led me all the way back to Mesopotamia, following bloodlines that have distributed around the planet Earth. And, if we look back in our history, a lot of our lineages, royal families, very important bloodlines that have been very heavily preserved in our history. If we lead and we research them and you follow them all the way back to the origin, they all have one origin. So it's really interesting, Gary, and there's really so much to study and to learn about this. But I think ultimately the message is that we understand how valuable and how powerful the human man is, you know,
Man and woman, right?
man and woman.
Yeah.
Yes.
What do you? I don't know if there's even a way to say what exactly this construct is, but as far as trying to back filtrate through the sort of incepted levels, if you can think of it like that, what would you say? Do you believe in the concept of we have like a body that's in stasis somewhere that's dreaming this reality, or is it a sort of stepped down version of a higher reality? How would you frame that?
Yeah, and that's a really awesome question because it kind of helps us kind of try to suggest to figure out what we are, right? And what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I see it, and I'm talking about this from the perspective of actually being able to see your body, your multidimensional body, and how things function energetically in a multidimensional body.
Can you see it through the
And,
screen? Can you see mine?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yes, I can. I do like international sessions with people on Skype actually. So
Wow.
yeah, and so what happens is this. There is this infinite, so we right now live in this matrix multiverse. And the Matrix multiverse, what makes it a multiverse is that there's different dimensions for what's being created. Okay. And because everything is energy, ultimately, everything is oscillating. Okay. And every oscillation, every movement is creating a dimension. basically. That's how
Mm.
dimensions are created. So what's occurring is that the human, in order to manifest itself into a three-dimensional dimension that we're in right now, this pure consciousness is kind of like, consider like this giant fountain that looks like the white, what we think is a white, right? And let's say that the black is this matrix multiverse. So what happens is they need each other in order to survive, because both of them, everything, we live in a dualistic reality.
Mm-hmm.
But all of the species, because this infinite consciousness is the fabric of all things, we are utilizing this as a stream of our origin. And when it comes in, it fragments within the dimensions. So what we are as humans is really just a projection of this infinite consciousness. And it has to fragment through many different levels. So what happens is we have the higher, the, let's say, source, and then we have the higher self. And that higher self has to go through several filtration systems based on the dimensions that it has access to. When it enters the physical body, we have something that we call a soul. That's the closest way to define how this infinite consciousness manifests in this dimension. So the soul then comes into the physical body, and when it comes in, that information is organized within the chakra system.
Mm.
So the chakra system, we have 7 chakras, main physical chakras, and many, many, many other chakras within the body. But these are the main ones. These are the main navigation tools that help us navigate the physical plane. The first 3 chakras are our connection to the physical plane, everything that allows us to have this, the 5 senses that help us have this sensory reaction to what we're experiencing. The top 3 chakras are the closest connection that we have to our higher self, or our higher abilities.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is that the soul connects to the physical body. And in this three-dimensional reality, we have DNA. We have, down to the molecular level, everything is mirroring like fractals, all the information that we contain within that ultimate source. And so when we connect to the body has to connect to the DNA, which is connected to your ancestral lineage. And that's what I call the network. So your family from your mother's side, family from your father's side. And so what happens is that we are cycling through information as we come into this earth. We are then connected with our ancestral network. And as we are living, experiencing through these manifestations of the physical body, what happens is that we are brought into, I guess, storylines based on our frequency, you know? So we're
Narratives.
kind of like cycling through this information here. So ultimately, the human body has the ability to access infinite consciousness based on their awareness that they have infinite consciousness, because the majority of us, as you know, we are here living in our physical body and experiencing life through the physical body. So we don't know, we're not aware that we are multidimensional beings. So it's really important to understand the structure of our reality, because that's going to help you move beyond all of this. Because ultimately, all of these species and, ETs and everything, and even this hybridization program that's happening, um, is just consciousness. Either it's aware of itself or it's rejecting itself. That's all we are, because we live in a dualistic existence. And so anything that rejects the consciousness within itself becomes ill or sick. And
Mm.
then it has to become parasitic because it's not self-sustaining anymore.
Right.
That's just the law of the universe, basically. So this is kind of how it is. And of course, there's so much more, because, this is just this dimension. How the human looks is actually like a web, and wherever the consciousness is concentrated and aware is at the center of the web.
Mm.
Then the information is connected to other dimensions. Like, for example, when you're dreaming and you're lucid dreaming, you have the ability to access other parts of yourself, fragments of yourself, which are spread out throughout this matrix universe.
Yeah, yeah. That's very interesting. I know for me particularly, and we've all gone through traumas, but with the way that I've done my life, is I found whatever it was that meditation was, which was like the silent spot. And
Sure.
then I was like, all right, well, none of that beforehand was any good whatsoever, and this silent spot is the only thing of any value because I had not yet seen the sort of flip side of it, to where I just thought it was all shit, basically, and I was having to contract.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I view it now, and I don't have, I don't see people's auras, and I don't see all the webs, but I do feel it. I feel in a very subtle way the sort of meanderings of the
Mm.
people outside of their physical body mind as presented in the present moment. But I would be curious to see or to remember like what it feels like to actually be connected in and not just seeing things, because I know it's doing something like that, like you're looking at
Yeah,
it through like a little tiny tube.
that's right. But the truth is that we all can. We just have to train. We have to understand. We have to read the manual of how the human body works. And then we're going to understand all of us have that ability. The ability that I have to see the multidimensional body, we all have that. So we just have to activate that in the body. It takes work. It takes time to sit down and make yourself meditate and make yourself break the programs that are provided to you by the matrix. We
Mm-hmm.
have to break those programs.
Yeah,
But yeah.
yeah. It's a crazy journey. I mean, this. How do you feel as far as community here in the realm or the Matrix? Because to me, it seems very disjointed, and
Mhm.
people are isolated. And then you have the sort of drone human beings versus the more aware human beings, and how that interplay happens. How do you see community as actually the people here on the earth feeling like they're actually connected with their multidimensional selves and servicing those multidimensional selves and not just being a cog in the machine? How do you see that sort of being able to blossom itself rather than people just, wearing the blinders?
How do I see it? Well, what I've dedicated my life to try to help people understand how to become more aware and how to activate this technology in their body. And what I'm doing is such a small scale. Like I wish that there was a way to do it on a much massive scale to help people, because when I see our society around us, all I see is a lot of pain, a lot of denial, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
fear. And there were times when it became intolerable to go out, because I could just feel and see like everyone suffering and going through these feelings. And I'm talking about very subtle things. I'm talking about the gorgeous girl walking down the mall looking like a Barbie doll.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about successful man. I'm talking about the poor man on the streets. Different levels of consciousness that you can see right through them. You can see how they are a product of all of the conditioning of their society, of their family, of their friends, and even of themselves. So I think what we need to do as a society in order to really create true community is to be brave enough to look at all of the fearful aspects of ourselves. And that it can be very scary and very difficult. And unfortunately, there are very few programs and, I guess, education to help us become aware that that's what's creating blockages in our lives. It's our own fear to be real with ourselves, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. So, and even in the spiritual community, I tend to not want to um keep the same program of compartmentalizing things, because that's exactly the same program that we're basically running right now. Like we have the spiritual community, and then we have the non-spiritual community, the zombie people, the non-zombie people.
Mm-hmm.
But all of us are still suffering. Like we're all still afraid of being the highest expression of ourselves. And I think as how to create a real true community of people that are conscious means, I mean, fearless consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so the question is, how can we educate people enough to let them know that they're allowed to do that?
Right. Right.
Well, it's a big project, and one that I'm, banging my head every day trying to think, like, how do I do that? How do I do that? And there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things. I think the more we talk about this, that's why I'm so happy and honored to do any kind of interview like this. So we can start the conversation, just put it out there
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
let people think about it and see if it serves them. Because there's free will. You can never impose on anyone the want to wake up. This is a we are all connected, but we are all individual consciousness. And if we don't want to wake up, we're not going to want to wake up. We're not going
Right.
to.
And nobody can force that. Even, I know it appears that a lot of shenanigans have happened and lots of sort of forcing, and they probably have on some level, but at the same time, for there to be diversity of experience, bad things have to happen. So who's going to take responsibility for the creating the universe in which someone can get murdered or raped? Like the responsibility has to at some point be taken by the inhabitants of the populace, and somehow you have to figure a sort of remedy to it, to the mindset that says, oh well, such and so violence has happened, so therefore religion, so you create these constructs to help combat the sort of ills of society, but then that puts you straight into another box, and then you're still scrunched down.
Yeah, yeah, in a sense, yes, that's true. It's a complex thing, and I think there was something I was going to tell you that there's this saying that I can never remember, but every time I hear someone say it, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what's happening. And it has to do with us agreeing to things without, it's like consent without action. Or do you know that
Consent
term
by
where it's like,
silence, like, is it something like that? Consent by silent, by not saying anything, you're consenting.
you got it.
Yeah.
And so you see, the system knows that. That's the law of the universe. The law of the universe is that we all have free will. And so what happens when people have free will, and the only reason why we have free will is because we're infinite consciousness, and nobody can control that infinite consciousness unless you make infinite consciousness believe that it's not infinite.
Right.
So the structure of this reality is built in a way, in such a compartmentalized way, that we feel like we're in one little box, in another box, in another box, in another box, so we can't move freely, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening is that all of the truths of our reality are wide open. They are everywhere. They are in history, they are in our art, they are in our music, they are in our films, in the entertainment industry, in everything is the truth of what's occurring.
Mm-hmm.
Little by little it comes out. It's coming out more because consciousness and evolution is something that you cannot stop. And so if we continue to allow and accept things by just being conform and thinking that, keeping believing that system, then we're not going to go anywhere, of course.
Right.
So it's really, the thing is to teach people to question, or to inspire them to question the reality. Because when you start to question things, that's when they start to get worried, right? And the thing is to have the right questions. And the only time we're going to have the right questions, if we are going back inside and having this internal dialogue with what's not working. If we're not aware of what's not working, and if we are complacent with what's not working, you're never going to have the inspiration to want to heal or change or fix anything, you know. So
Yeah.
that's what has to change, and it's the same thing with illness. That's exactly what it is. It's manifested like fractals. Everything is manifested like fractal systems, just cycles of the same thing over and over, micro and macro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the same thing, and like me personally, I always have visions of just like a bunch of people. I don't know. Everyone runs out of their house into the street and just says hello. Like we're all living here. Like let's say hello to each other. Like I have. To me, it seems simple, like how you could sort of break it up a little bit, but for some reason, or maybe I don't want to be the first one to say like run out into the street or something like that. But it doesn't seem so difficult. I feel like like you said, it's all out in the open. Everybody knows to some extent, and the ones that pretend that they're not knowing, they know that they're pretending. They're just they're doing this. They're hiding behind their hands and like I can't see you, so you can't see me.
Yeah,
Right? It's something like that. Like to
yeah,
where to me it seems a little simpler. I don't know exactly how you would do it, but the control structure is like a computer or something. It's not like a human being. All the human beings are lined up behind this supercomputer or whatever it is that's spitting out the sort of structure, and they're saying, well, the thing said I gotta move this way and this way at 11 o'clock, and then sit in that chair at 12 o'clock, and then I get to eat my pizza, and then
right.
so everyone's doing that, but then the fear program is still running that says don't dislodge the program. But I feel like if a whole bunch of people just at once just jumped, everyone jumps up in the air at once or something, do something in unison, then you can just be like, oh, it's we made it all up.
Yeah,
The whole thing was just made
yeah.
up.
You got it. You got it. That's the thing. And, and don't be afraid to be the first one. I mean, you're doing an amazing job. I commend you so much for providing a platform and doing all this work to try to get this stuff out. That's amazing. So thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah, it's good. It's it's good for me. It's good for everybody who comes on the channel and talks about it. And I know everyone, all of my subs are out there. Everyone's basically in their own little thing, and they're like, most people complain because that's just the state that we've gotten to. Is that everybody, it sucks. You look outside and there's homeless people everywhere in like the most. San Francisco is the techiest, richest city in the world, and it's like homeless people are everywhere. There's no communication happening, or else just everybody's okay with ego running the show.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. You're right. It's just, I don't know. So it's up to us. It really is up to us. Like, I think we have to stop thinking someone else is going to do it or someone
Mm-hmm.
else is brave enough to start. I mean, we got to do it. We got to do it. We have to unite, you know. We have to unite, and the people that are conscious and aware uniting to create a mass movement. And whether it's a silent kind of a unification little by little, I mean, for example, one of the things that I'm really trying to figure out what to do is with this 5G that's coming out,
Mm.
you know, that's a really serious problem that we need to talk about. And I think some people are afraid to talk about that or don't even know that we can talk about it. They think, well, there's nothing we can do. I really think there is something we can do. I think if enough people stand up and say, no, we don't accept this in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in our schools, we do not accept that, that they are going to have to listen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Otherwise, it'll be pretty clear that we're in some kind of a dictatorship, which is happening silently, but yeah.
I mean, I feel like everybody's 100% entrained. Not everybody. There are some people that aren't, but if you look out there, the mind virus or whatever, the subconscious programming is already 100% fully working in all of the people. They're doing the same thing every day. Nothing ever changes, and it's sad. Like they're not
Yeah.
they're not living their lives. Obviously, they are literally in zombie mode. So to add another layer of 5G millimeter technology that's going to put them more into zombie mode, it doesn't seem like, yes, it's a threat, but how much more can they get? Like I don't see how it could go too much further than it already is.
Yeah. So we'll have to figure out what to do with that one. That's one that I'm trying to work on.
But yeah, I mean, I think just getting together and talking about stuff. I don't know, hanging out with people, with the aware people in your city. Like, I know a couple people in San Francisco. We get together and we talk about stuff, and it's just about, because every, two people that are aware that get together and talk, it's
Yeah.
you're doing the vertical thing, right? Rather than a billion robots are doing literally absolutely 100% nothing, and then if you have two aware people that are getting together, then you're creating this vertical access to the further formerly suppressed, higher self information, whatever you want to call it.
Yes. You're absolutely right.
And then
Yeah.
we don't know what's going to come from it, because we already know what happens from this sort of planning mind, because the planning mind is already in that controlled thing. It's like, how do I obtain such and so thing? Oh, I got to write down my steps and then go and try to do that. That's already doing it wrong. It's not that. It's like it's just bringing the energy together and then watching what happens. Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah. Maybe we need to facilitate more groups like that then in our
Yeah,
community.
yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
We can definitely collaborate in the Bay Area. I mean,
I'm super down. Let me know. I am
yeah.
very happy to do that. Yeah.
We're just like 45 minutes north of you, something like that. You're in
Yeah.
Oakland?
I'm in Union City. I'm in the East Bay. So where are you again? You're where?
Vallejo.
Okay. So yeah, you're like 45 minutes, an hour,
Yeah,
something.
yeah. We should get
You know.
together.
Yeah.
And I have like a meditation group that I go to sometimes in San Francisco, and I'm sure they'd love to have you. I mean, it's literally just a simple matter of connecting to people together, and eventually, like magnets, all of a sudden, bump, 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 and they're all stuck together, and then it's like you make some energy happen. It doesn't seem super hard to me.
You're right. You're right. It shouldn't be so hard. I think it's maybe are we feel insecure sometimes to be rejected by groups, by other people. So
Yeah,
I'm very happy to connect. That's wonderful.
yeah, we can work on it. Can come show us some UFOs or something.
Oh yeah, we should do a night watch actually. That's like one of my companies with my with Tana Newberry. She's the co-host of one of my radio shows, and so we do night watch tours. It was so awesome. We had one the other day. Actually, Friday we had one. It was amazing.
Yeah.
We saw two ships. And so this is where things turn really interesting. Like the ship would move and then it would flare up because we have these lasers that we utilize, like really super high powered lasers, and the goggles are military grade. They're like $4,000 or $5,000 a piece,
Mm-hmm.
and basically it lights up the sky like 20,000 times brighter, so you can see every little thing that's moving up there in detail. And so when we see the craft moving, we can shine the laser at it, and it when you do that, sometimes they'll respond, and it did.
Yeah.
So it blinked like really, really powerful. And then it keeps moving, it blinks, and then all of a sudden it'll go up. And then it disappears. So, that's not like regular movement like a satellite or a plane or, even an insect or a bug or something, because we identify really clearly how to identify the difference between a military craft, an airplane, a satellite, or anything else. Like we help people kind of navigate what to look for, and so these kinds of things are really exciting when we see them. Um,
Are they upset that they're being uncloaked or something, or they don't care?
I have no idea. I you know sometimes people think it's controversial, and coming from my background of understanding of what these ETs are, um, the question always comes into play, like, is it a good idea to be connecting or wanting to connect with these ETs? And, that's a good question to have. But I think that this is a wonderful way to help people start to question what's occurring. Even if they see a light that's so strange it's moving, you have to question. You can't just see it and ignore something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
so at least it gets people thinking, like, okay, maybe there's something more that we need to look at. So that's the reason why I partnered with her to do these things. And yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, we do something like a CE5 at the beginning. And so, just to explain, a CE5 is basically when you intentionally vector in craft. And it really just depends on your intention and grounding. And we do a lot of kind of energy work to kind of bring it in.
Mm-hmm.
And all you're doing is raising your frequency to the highest level possible, and then hoping to align with something that is on that same level.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's what we do, and I'd be happy to do one with you and your friends sometimes. So let me know.
Yeah, yeah.
If
I'm
anybody else wants to do a night watch tour, you guys can just look at the website at ufonightwatchtours.com.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think well, part of my sort of strategy in even having the channel and reaching out to people is that, to me, I mean, I've gone, the ego death thing, the whatever horrifying stuff. I've never had an experience, like physical experience, where I'm being tortured or something that I remember, but I've had the mental sort of cast into the abyss sort of thing, where I had to face that blackness that
Yeah.
erases all, human meaning, and then replaces it with nothing or with horror only. And so, like, when I came back from that, then everything here in this realm appears like you guys are just running around. You've got bodies. You should be playing and stuff. Like, if nobody's torturing you, why aren't you outside and playing and jumping around and like having fun and stuff? Like, so I try to I try to give, lessen the sort of badness of what's out there, because I know there's horrifying things. I know that they do exist, but at the same time, if we're infinite, we have to at some point get over our fear. It's like a toddler with the bike and the training wheels. You gotta take the training wheels off at some point and look at what's out there.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And really, we have to look past the idea of being afraid of other species. I mean, we really have to prepare to
Mm-hmm.
be uh I think maybe part of the reason why people are afraid to even consider or question that, because they don't want to know. They don't want to know what's up there, or what's outside that's different from us. We have such a hard time accepting things that are different from us, from the norm, even in our own society. I mean,
Yeah.
that's ridiculous. And that's the illusion of separation that is the biggest lie that we're living. So hopefully, if we try to experiment, like you're saying, and trying to look at things from a different perspective outside of ourselves, it would benefit us greatly on an educational level, expansive spiritual level, on many, many levels, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
People just get stuck. They get into a groove, in a rut, or whatever you want to call it, a life path, and they just go along. And I know I'm guilty of it myself. I do the same thing. I That's just how we are. For some reason, coming into this place, we maybe it's because of past traumas, but whatever the case, it put us into this state to where if we find something that's reasonable, we want to like grab onto it and never ever look any other way, and just like close the eyes and just do that forever.
Yeah. Well, we like what's safe. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
But at the same time, everything always changes. Your life is going to change at some point. You're not going to always be doing the exact same thing you're doing now, and I'm not going to. None of us are going to be doing that. So why not actually get together and collaborate and like do something
Yeah.
in this place, rather than wake up, eat, drink coffee, go to the same job, be bored, come home, watch TV, go to bed, repeat. Like, that's really boring.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, I hope that people are inspired, maybe even by just watching this, and kind of question their routine. Because one of the things that happened to me in the corporate world is that I couldn't work. I couldn't be in that cubicle. It was like death to my soul to have to wake up every day and go sit in that box.
Mm-hmm.
That was like dead. Like there was no creativity, and my soul was slowly dying for years. And that's why I started my business. But then again, I came back into another little box. And so we go into these routines, and the soul is not meant to go into routines like that. We are meant to be, co-creators. That's what we
Mm-hmm.
are. That's what makes humans so powerful, that we can manifest absolutely everything that we want, that we need. And when I say that, some people, they start to cringe because they're like, no, you can't. I can't have a yacht and I can't have $1 million. You
Uh-huh.
see, those are products of the system. And so the system told you that that's all that you want to achieve. But the things that we're capable of achieving are so much greater than material things and physical things. And so that's the kind of things that we need to become educated in, that we're co-creators, we're healers, we're, whether it's artists or finding these massive solutions for situations that we have. That's what makes the human race such a valuable thing, among other things. But our soul is so expansive.
Yeah, we definitely forget that, and I know for myself, the emotion, even just the emotions, right? Like I became numb because of traumas and stuff, and then all of a sudden I will get hit with this sort of emotion, and if I were to weigh that one bit of emotion versus any of the projection life stuff that you're taught as a kid, like they wouldn't even, there's no possible comparison. So like to get people back to even being able to like step up to the doorway of opening up to different energetic stuff that you feel with your own body, because people don't
Hmm.
even know anymore. They don't even realize what it is that the body is, and the sort of wave pattern, energy patterns that can come through that will just change you in 2 seconds. Like people forget
Yeah.
completely about what they are. It's not
Yeah.
about going and getting the narrative correct. It's just never about that. But for some reason, we get stuck on thinking like I got to get my narrative correct before I can start living my life, and they stay doing that.
Yep. You got it. That's very true.
So anyway, this is we're running up a little bit. We're probably coming to a sort of closing spot here, but this was really good.
Awesome. Yeah.
Thank you
Thank you
for
so much. Thank you
yeah.
so much for having me. It's been an honor to be on here,
Mm.
and I'm happy to collaborate in any way. Just let me know.
Yeah. We'll communicate outside of this and see if we can all get together and have lunch, or maybe you can come to the meditation circle or something.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Gary.
Thank you, Geraldine. We'll talk soon, okay?
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Peace.